So people are here. Anybody who's got a question, go right ahead. I've got too much stuff in here. I always do, but this week I got to working on this on Monday and Tuesday because I was coming down here to South Carolina where I am now and did not want to take away time from working with Martha in her garden. So I said, I'll get this ready early. And as things do, work expands to fill the available time. I got myself all involved in researching several things and maybe too much in here today. But now we can talk about whatever you want. Oh, what do you mean, Bink? Why are you blinking at me? There. You all know about this. Look at that kiwi vine. Is that a beautiful plant or what? And the flowers smell so good, but you can't see them. You have to get down and look under the leaves to really see them, or walk or grow the kiwi vine over an arbor so you can walk under it, look up and smell them. Real sweet smell, honey smell. Diane is not here, but she sent these not to ask a question, but to confirm a guess that we made. Her witch hazel, Arnold's Promise, is blooming, and she said it's the first year now that it's in its fourth year. It's the first year that it's really had significant flowers on it. Aren't they beautiful? They're such a bright yellow, and they smell very sweet in the afternoon on a warm spring day. But she had sent in a picture this earlier about some problem, and I said I would prune out that branch. I think it's a sucker off the base, and Arnold Arnold Promise is a notorious one for that. She said, "Well, this is the one you said was a bad boy." And look at it, she said. "Now don't look at the out of focus flowers below, the buds up on top. This is the branch that I had pointed out to her, which is not blooming at the same time. It's that there, this guy right there." She said, "You're right. It took until it's blooming that look," because I had told her the bark looked different. Um, Arnold Promise, if you have that witch hazel, it's a wonderful witch hazel. It's bushy, branches so thickly, so holds a lot of flowers. This is just a young one, but it's notorious for suckering. And the fact that it's not blooming right now might mean that it's grafted to a fall blooming witch hazel, our native one, or it might, as Steve pointed out, be grafted to a parodia. It's a tree that's related in the same family as witch hazel, which means it can graft and probably grows a little faster. But at any rate, you got to watch for those guys on Arnold Promise. And Gail was listening to us talk about amaryllis. Are you there, Sonia? Sonia's here. Good.
There I am. Oh,
Hi,
hi.
hi, Sonia.
Janet. I'm just writing your check. I haven't mailed it yet.
Oh, don't worry, don't worry. We're all friends here. We wouldn't cut anybody off. But Gail heard us talking about your amaryllis and it not blooming as many, and she remembered in her book by Catherine White. This is quite an old gardening book. I take a census of the leaves on my 4 amaryllis bulbs to make sure I'm feeding them enough. And this makes such good sense for anybody who grows iris. It's kind of the same thing going on. However many leaves they have is how strong the plant is growing. So she's looking to see whether or not there's enough there. And she 9 leaves will mean that she'll have 3 flower stalks the next year, which will be
9.
yeah. And so and this is when it's been growing outside. So at the end of the year, if it has 9 leaves, it's going to have 3 flower stalks. So what she does is she puts them outside and feeds them with a full strength fertilizer, all 3 element with trace elements. Anyway, so if you put yours outside this year, and for those who are going to do this, remember that Sonia is right. We talked about this and looked it up earlier. That narcissus bulb fly that lays its eggs at the base of daffodil leaves also affects amaryllis. And if it lays its eggs at the base of the leaves, it'll chew down in and eat the bulb and the leaf, and that will keep it from growing at all. So, and that is about the middle of July, that is done laying eggs. So you could wait and put your amaryllis out at the middle of July, or you can get floating row cover, which is a thin spun bond fabric that you throw over the whole thing and you just peg it down to the ground. The light can get through, the air can get through, the moisture can get through, but the insects can't get through to the plant, so it can protect the plant for you. Thank you, Gail. This is so nice to have people sharing like this. You have to put pieces together from far and wide to say, oh, I heard about that. It's kind of like on that kiwi vine. Oh, I'm going to go back to the kiwi vine for a minute. Oh, come on.
Can I just ask you something?
Sure.
When you say put it outside, do you mean I put it in the ground outside because sometimes I leave it in the pot outside. So it has to be in the ground outside.
No, either way, if it's in a large enough pot that it's not going to be drying out on you all the time, leave it in the pot, but you can also put it in the ground. The idea is that outside has got, although it's bright inside your house, unless you've got a really good grow lamp,
No, I don't.
yeah, the light outside is almost 10 times as bright as the brightest inside the house. So you're just getting more energy to the plant when you put it outside. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the ground or not, as long as it's getting all that light.
Okay, because I always put them outside, but not always in the ground. Okay.
Yep. So
Okay, thank you.
sure, I forgot to say about the kiwi vine and putting things together from different places. Somebody had asked me about why their kiwi vine died back, and I said, I don't know any reason, and I can't see any reason written up here. Then one of my kiwi vines died back also, and I said, boy, it looks like something chewed on it. And I cut it back and it grew back. And then years later, I was reading something that someone else had written, and they mentioned cat scratch fever. I said, "What is cat scratch fever?" And it turns out that cats really like to claw the branches of kiwi vine. There's some chemical in that vine that helps them um, cure infections or something. And I thought, well, that was the year that those feral cats were living in that client's garden when that kiwi vine dried. But you don't find that out unless people talk to each other. So thank you, Gail, for looking up the amaryllis information and sending that to us. So what you want is you want 9 leaves to have a really big bulb. And I think it was Barb who sent this one. She said, "Have you heard of this firefly petunia that glows at night?" I did. I heard about it last year. It's been genetically engineered. It has a fish gene, yeah, no, a mushroom gene engineered into it so that the flowers glow at night. And it's I consider it kind of a fad thing, a little bit like hula hoops, probably. But they're charging 25, 30, $35 a plant, and it's a petunia so I wouldn't say that you're going to plant a whole bed of these, although the growers say they can look kind of cool. Firefly petunia. Does anybody here who's come in early have any questions? Probably not. Uh-oh. Let's see. How do I get my menu back if I've told the computer to turn? I can't turn on my participants list, and Stephen isn't here yet to tell me if anybody's raising their hand. But if you've got a question, turn your microphone on and let's see what happens with dueling microphones. How do you like this Alaska false cypress in front of the house, Martha? Is that a cool tree? We have one of those that planted on the side of our house. We had one at the old house. They grow very fast, and I used to cut off the top every 5 years. I would cut it to keep it small, and I would cut off the top about here at 5 or 6 feet and use it as a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. That's just the coolest Christmas tree. You could hang branches. The branches are quite lax though, so I would put a hook. I had a hook in the ceiling at the old house, and I would put fishing line from the hook down to the tips of the branches to hold them up so that I could line the whole branch with ornaments. Very cool. And some people say they're not a false cypress anymore. Now they say that they're I've forgotten what they're even calling them now. Classifications. I think we've said before, Steve and I, that the convention in taxonomy and naming of species is that if a name changes officially, then for 20 years, publishers agree to put both names into every book. In which case, if I got 20 more years, I'm going to be in my 90s and I'm not going to care about the names of plants. Who cares what the names are at that point? I knew them once upon a time, and who cares from here on out? Um, oh, go ahead, Bev, you talk. Turn on
Yeah.
your microphone.
I have two questions actually. What is your opinion of liquid aeration as opposed to core?
I can't say that I know any big differences between the two. The one uses air to fracture the soil after they drill it. One uses water pumped in to do it. And I think it's just a matter of equipment, whether they're carrying a compressor around with them or whether they're carrying water. The water, if they're using fertilizer, is going to spread the fertilizer more quickly, which that in that case I'm not sure about because the fracturing alone, the aeration alone makes the plant grow better. And sometimes the 18-inch deep hole that they drill for the core aeration might take the fertilizer, if it's liquid fertilizer, too deep. plant
Indeed.
use it
Mhm.
all at once. So I guess overall, I'd rather see them use an air compressor. But if they're charging you for fertilizer and it's liquid fertilizer, that I might say is not necessary.
Okay. My other question is, I have spots. I've moved a year ago over to Macomb County. There's spots in my front lawn that has that tall fescue, that weedy grass. So
Mhm.
last fall, I sprayed a bunch of spots with Roundup, and I've had somebody come out and dig them up for me. Now, I want to reseed, but my question is, when can I put on pre-emergence? It's been so cold that you can't plant grass seed really yet.
You can plant grass seed.
I
You can
can.
definitely plant grass. You can.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
may be too late to put on pre-emergence. When did you have the stuff dug out? Because the mustards, like the wintercress and the bittercress, have already germinated. So I would take a look at the spots that they dug out, and if they left them clear and there's nothing there, you might want to hit them again with Roundup, and then seed in a week or two.
And then when can I do? It's too late to do pre-emergence for crabgrass then?
Not for crabgrass. No,
No, but
crabgrass doesn't
yeah,
germinate until June, but the,
yeah.
the cool
Okay.
season weeds have germinated, and so I would take a look. We were
So
working.
I can put pre-emergence for crabgrass on anytime before June. Just wait as long as I can on the new grass.
Right, yeah, right, because you've got to let the new grass germinate first.
Right, right.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And good luck with the new garden. It's both exciting and frustrating to have a new garden, isn't it?
It is. Yes. Yes. It's easier to start out with a blank slate than it is to
Yeah,
be pulling out shrubs and trees and yeah. But it's
exactly.
fun. It's fun.
It's one of the things Steve and I wanted when we moved houses. It was on our list. We wanted to have less landscaped rather than more. And instead we got the typical too much stuff. And yeah, you do it. In almost 2 years pulling things out and changing things around.
We
Thank
always
you.
do.
Thank you for the question. I can't see whether Diane is here yet, but Diane sent this picture just recently with
I can. Who are you looking for?
Diane. It might say in Waterville, but they'll be alphabetical. There's no Diane there.
Nope.
Okay, then I'll email her about them.
Oh, Diane of Waterville. Yes,
There you
it's
go.
there.
Hi, Diane. Um, Challenge accepted. This is cardinal flower, Lobelia cardinalis, the red blooming native cardinal flower. And the evergreen, the rosette, the flowers at the bottom are pretty much evergreen. These look like this, and she's wondering what to do about them. If you can clip stuff out of them, you can, but it's such a dense, low rosette that you can't really just cut the whole thing. You'd have to take them out individually. It looks to me like these suffered the same problem that the grass did when we had that snow that melted and then froze, and we had a frozen layer across them. It damaged the crowns. But they'll probably recover. And I'm not sure that they're susceptible, not sure if they are susceptible to any particular kind of problem that the dead leaves would spread. But I wouldn't worry too much about them. I will say, though, that cardinal flower is one that picks its place. I hope you've got it in a place that stays moist all the time because that's when they're most beautiful. The only place that we would grow ours is right next to the pond where the overflow is because they're beautiful there. Um, they boy, I'm losing words here. They When people say that they're short-lived, they prove them wrong because if they're growing where it's moist all the time, they are big, beautiful 5, 6 year perennials. They're just wonderful plants. But yeah, plants did take a hit this year. Montauk daisy was an issue that came up. Oh, it's time to start, but I'm going to talk about because I could not find a picture of Montauk daisy in bloom that did it justice. This is quite late. You can see that the sumac is starting to bloom here already. And this is Montauk daisy the way that it should look, like a big-faced daisy mum going on late in the year. And this is one that I cut back hard every spring. Um, this is what it looked like when I started on it. I went over and went, what has somebody been doing to this Montauk daisy? This is in the spring, and all someone had done in the fall was came through and they kind of clipped across the top. And what that does is leave, because it's a shrub, it leaves the branches to grow out new branches or not. So there's dead wood and there's wood growing and there's gaps between the stuff growing at the top. And these branches growing at the top tend to be lax and spread all over the place. So it gets even bigger and more sloppy. It's like a dead stuff. And that first year that I took over these plants, I had I had come in late enough that they were up this far, had to actually go down with clippers and clip individual branches out of the tide of upcoming green. So I was cutting out things like that because I don't want all those gaps in there, and I don't want a plant that's even bigger than 3 feet by 4 feet. And that's what I ended up with that first year, was something that looked like this. Now Sonia sent in a picture. Sonia Sauter sent in this picture and wondered. She said, I cut down all that I could, but should I cut this piece? It's still sticking up above the rest. Well, what might happen is this outline of the plant, when it's 3 feet tall, may have a bubble in it. This might be a little bit taller than the rest of it, but it's not going to be any big deal. And if you take loppers or a saw, you can cut it off. But what's happened to this one is it's been grown without being cut back hard for a while. And so it's established some dominant stems. And that's why that one's bigger and taller than the rest. But you can leave it and cut it out next year if you want. You don't have to go back. I know how hard those are to cut. You're getting in so close to things. And we always worry about hitting the buds that are there. So I would go ahead and cut it back. But I wouldn't worry about cutting it back. There's lots of other things to do. And since it's time to get started, and I know my husband is out looking for our granddaughter.
No, I'm here.
There, okay.
Yeah, wires were crossed, shall we say. They are enjoying. They said, I asked them what they wanted for dinner. They said mac and cheese, but then I remembered I got those frozen stouffer.
Right.
And the ones I got had mac and cheese and broccoli, and we wasn't thrilled about that.
So you had a rebellion on your hands.
Yeah. But Biz is eating the chicken Alfredo, and Aubrey's eating the regular, just Alfredo noodles. So they're surviving and doing well.
Well, thank you for taking care of them.
Anyway.
Steve is at home in White Lake. I'm in South Carolina, in Charleston, just north of in Mount Pleasant, just north of Charleston, with our friend Martha Ferguson. We've been out gardening today. It was 72 and getting to be hot on our backs in the middle of the day when the sun came down. But we've been checking which things made it through the winter and which things the deer have been eating, and doing some weeding. If you are coming on and haven't been here before, if you go into chat, which we'd love you to do, remember to chat to the whole group. Don't dial that chat to Stephen or to Janet, because if you do, we might miss it and other people couldn't see it to understand what we're talking about.
And another thing I notice it does sometimes is if you send us a private, it changes my response to your private, and then I type in a response to everybody and it goes just to you. So I have to double check that. That's
if we
hard.
were
It just makes our fun job a little bit harder. It's still fun, but
if we were as good as our daughter is at moderating, we would be
It'd be
able
no
to
problem.
notice things like that. But we don't notice things like that when it comes down to it. And as Bev just did before we got officially started, if you want to raise your hand and talk, good. We'd like to hear more voices. There's a raise your hand button either in reactions or it might be in your participants menu. But if you click raise your hand, you'll jump to the top of the list. Steve will see you and say, okay, there's a question from, and you can turn your microphone on and talk. Either way works. The more people who talk, the more things we all learn. Ready, Stephen?
all right. Good evening and welcome to Free4All Friday. All gardeners are welcome. Come and celebrate growing and cultivating problem solving with us.
This is our 36th time of welcoming anybody, any and all who'd like to come. This is gardenataz.org. I'm Janet McConovich.
I'm Stephen Nicola.
And our gardenataz.org is our place to put the things that we've written over the years and share them with other people, and a place where now we can talk to other people. Just like for years we wrote in magazines and in newspapers, mostly by question and answer format. And we learned so much going in and out of other people's gardens, virtually or really. Back in the old days, we would get letters rather than email. So we had addresses and we could actually do drive-bys to look at the tree that usually we would write people first and say, do you mind if we come by? And most people said, sure. But sometimes we would read a question. Oh, that's how we found emerald ash borer.
Yep.
Yeah, we one of our readers wrote into when we wrote in the Detroit News and said, "My ash tree is doing this. 2 years ago, I did this because the arborist said so. Then I did this because the arborist said so. And now I'm looking around and realizing that the rest of the trees in the neighborhood look bad." And it was near where one of our instructors at the time we had a gardening school. One of our instructors lived. So I called Nancy and I said, "Why don't you go take a look at this tree and in this neighborhood? Tell me what you see." And she went to see what T.L. Hart had written about. And she called us. She said, "You need to come down here and see this." And we went and looked and went, "Whoa, this is not ash yellows that everybody's been writing about for years." So we called in the Department of Agriculture. We called in the extension. We climbed the tree. We cut some branches down. We sent them in, and Dave Roberts and oh, Bob, I forgot your name, Bob.
Greasy.
No, not Bob. Anyway, he sent it back the first time. He said it's bark borers. And we went, "No, it's not bark beetles. Look at the D-shaped holes on it." Anyway, that's how. So anybody who can share things with us. Send us
Yep.
emails. We'll look up the answers. If we already have answered, we'll send you to where we have it on the website. If we haven't answered, like this week, we'll get all involved in it. So this is Free for All Fridays. Tell people about it. Tell them that our Free for All Friday page always has the link on it so that they can click on it and join us. They can drop in and ask a question that they need to work on that weekend. It's just a great way to do it. If you don't ask questions, we're going to tell you what we've been seeing. And I know that can be interesting, but there's lots more going on out there. That's certainly what we know.
We only have 4 eyes between the two of us. When there's 40 people looking, that's 80 eyes.
Good
Big-
point,
big
Stephen. Yeah,
difference.
and you're right. They do. Everybody sees something different. I see an espalier pear that's reminding me to tell people this is the why you have to trim your rose the way we told you to. Pear is in the rose family, just like apple and cherry, and it's blooming on 2-year-old wood. See the wood that grew this year sticking up with no fruit on it? It didn't flower and it's not going to fruit not till next year. If you want that espalier to stay small or you want that rose to stay in its size, then you cut it back to good 2-year-old wood and you keep clipping off what's there. So it's time to clip this espalier for it to get its second clip of the year, just
Yep.
like climbing roses that we showed you. Okay, we're just going to keep on moving through. Ooh, I never noticed how purple and blue really don't go together. And that's in our old
It's a
garden.
good thing that these only last
Yeah,
a month or so, where this is there all the time.
yeah.
It's much duller now. I mean, that was when it was almost brand new, and it was a much brighter blue than what we have now.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's after the equinox and things happen fast. Once the days get to the point of that little bit longer day than night, stuff really starts happening. And for all of the winter, and then when it looked like it was black, this is not a black and white picture. This is what it looked like. And that when that snow came down after we had a 70-degree day and then we got snow. And it iced up, which is probably what damaged the crowns of the lobelia that I showed you before we got started and some other things there. It's just so nice to see the sun coming up further north all the time. This is a sunrise, oh, might have been 2 weeks ago, just before the equinox. And I noticed that day, I drive by the school pretty much every day. This is the high school building. And about a week ago, the sun was coming up here. Then 2 days later, it was coming up here. 2 days later, it was coming up here. See, it's stretching further. It happens faster after the equinox. It comes up further to the north, making the day longer for us, which is really cool. So celebrate the equinox. We should all do that. Go out and do our wine and cheese dances. If you don't have Eranthus winter aconite, you need to have these cheery little guys early. They come up real early. And I mean, they look like little clown ruffs, don't they?
Yep.
And they spread by seed. Do you see the seedlings in there? So all you'd have to do is put a few in and leave them for a little while, and then don't mulch that area heavily. Some people mulch things way too much, and you can't have self-grown, self-sown things if you have too much mulch on there. Leaves, that's no problem. These seedlings come up with leaves on there that they can just kind of hustle their way through, leaning this way and that way, but a whole bunch of bark mulch is going to stop them from coming up.
Judith has a hand up.
Hey, Judith, go ahead.
Hi.
Hey,
Um,
Judith.
I have two big questions, but I'll do them one at a time and let other people speak. Okay. So I have apparently an invasion of English ivy. It's been in one contained place for a long time, but the new neighbors put up a big fence, and boy, that stuff was climbing all over their fence.
Yeah,
And I'm taking a look at it, and there are some pretty heavy duty roots, stems down there
yeah.
and roots coming up. And I am pulling them and cutting them, but I know that that's not going to be the equal of their power. So I'm wondering what might be the best way to at least discourage them, if not get rid of them.
Is there a
I'm assuming, yeah,
thick colony of them on the other side
yeah.
that's fueling
Oh,
this?
I don't think so. I don't think
Oh.
so. I can't see because of my neighbor's fence. I suppose I could peek on the other side, but I think pretty much that it's coming from me.
Oh, well, then the only way that I've found to get rid of ivy is to dig out all that I can and mark the places where I had a really thick stem and roots that I couldn't get out because it was next to a fence post or a foundation or a tree trunk or whatever, and keep coming back and clipping those off until they die back. It usually is a 2-year process because the first year you're just every week walking by and going, no, 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 and taking another leaf off where you couldn't get them before. The second year, you might have to look every month and just make sure they're not there, but you can starve it out that way. But it takes persistence.
With any woody
Other, what do you,
vine, woody things,
the other option,
these
yeah.
invasives, yeah, it's tough.
The other option is to when you get to one of those thicker stems that you can't dig out or pull out, clip it back and put a dot of brush be gone on it. It's a herbicide that is a wood killer, and normally the instructions will tell you to mix it with water and spray it to kill, and it will work that way. But if you just take a kid's tooth paintbrush and dip it into the full strength brush be gone, and within about 15 minutes of cutting the stem, if you tap that on it, that usually kills back that part that's there because it gets absorbed into the wood before it closes over. But I'm not big on using herbicide. The only time that we ever did that ourselves, maybe we did it twice, but we were digging out buckthorn in a wooded area. Remember when we had your cousin Tom help us move
Yep,
that big rock, Steve? We were
yep.
digging out buckthorn in a wooded area, and the wooded area was full of native dogwoods, and we didn't want to hurt the roots of the dogwoods. So as we got closer to the dogwoods, we were not digging buckthorn. We were uh, uh, painting it with
Cut
a
and
little bit
paint,
of brush gone. Yeah,
cut and paint.
yeah.
Yeah, so not too much danger of it's killing off things that I don't want to kill.
Unless you spill the brush be gone or let it drip on other things, which I found, especially now with my hands shaking, I would not try because I wasn't even steady enough in my 40s when we did that with the dogwood trees.
Right.
Sometimes
Okay.
when you try to be too careful, try to be careful, it would be better to just go in there and maybe just let's just do it, and you would probably be neater than heck. But if you're trying to be careful, you're gonna lift it up and you're gonna brush it off, and a big blob's gonna fall.
I didn't find it too hard with the brush, but remember when we tried spraying in the coffee can, Steve, because somebody said
Oh,
it was a good idea. Well, that was a disaster. So I'm not even going to tell you what that is.
So how do you spell brush be gone?
I think it's BRUSH hyphen B hyphen gone.
Oh, thank
it
you.
might be GON even. Not
Okay.
sure.
And
Great.
it'll come up. It'll come up.
So
Donna,
maybe try, yeah. So maybe try the attrition approach first, and then if that isn't completely effective, then brush.
Yeah,
yeah,
then and you can
I
do
think
that.
that's the better option to do. It avoids using the pesticide that you may not need.
Right, because you
Great.
have to buy a bottle of this stuff and you'll be stuck with it forever. I think we gave the bottle that we had to somebody else years later. I said, we've never used this again. And somebody had an area they had to clear out. And I said, here, it's your turn. You can use this bottle. That was when we first wrote about, we wish they had single-use bottles of pesticides. Maybe that'd be more expensive, but I don't want to have these things sitting on the shelf in my house for years and years and years.
Yeah, good point.
You said you had 2 questions.
Ooh, I get to ask two at the same time?
unless there's
We
another
don't have
hand.
another hand up for a question. Donna just
Okay.
wanted to comment though, English ivy, another one of those ground covers that needs constant attention to keep pulling as you see it.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. We know that there are others of us out there who, I cut English ivy, dug it out, and cut it off of some trees going up a client's place because if it goes up the trees and bridges the gaps between the branch and the trunk, it can create a wind sail, and that can push the tree over because there's so much. And this one was overcoming these trees. So I dug it out of the ground cover area and I cut it at the base of the trees and I peeled it off. And we had the arborist company peel it. I said, take all that stuff off up there. So they took a bucket truck and took it off at the top. But there were a couple of pads of just brown English ivy trunks attach themselves further up to the trunk of the tree. And I thought, no big deal. They're cut, they have no roots. We've cut all their leaves off of them. The next year, there they are growing. If there's enough atmospheric moisture, those darn things were absorbing moisture from the air and were growing out from darn English ivy. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what's your second question, Judith?
Okay. All right. So every year I spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make lawn in my backyard. It's the only place that doesn't have ground cover. And every year, whether it's rain or drought, I have a nice lawn for a bit, and then I have nasty weeds, and I'm seeing them right now, and then it dies back, and it doesn't actually come back. And this year I'm taking a look at it all pockmarked and yellow and green things coming up and weeds and saying, why am I doing this? I don't even like grass.
That's,
So
that's the question we ask in our backyard. We've got so much shade that the grass does not grow well. Have you
yeah,
tried growing is it shady back there?
it's part shade, part sun. It gets sun for depending on where in the lawn, it might get it for 6 hours, 7 hours, and then gradually it will shade in.
Oh, okay, well,
Definitely part and part.
have you tried one of they're more expensive, but the big companies like Scott's that has the premium blends for shade because they'd have mixes of the fine fescues and the red fescues that fill in a little bit better. Have you tried one of those?
I use Johnny's because it's supposed to be less awful.
I,
Oh,
I I haven't used Johnny, so I don't know, but I know you're going to need a mix of seeds that doesn't rely on bluegrass.
uh-huh.
'Cause in the shade, bluegrass is just not going to make it, but the fine fescues and the red fescues do, and they use those mixes, but it is more expensive to get those. That's all I could say to
I
do.
don't mind. Well, I'm wondering whether there's a fast-growing ground cover that I could put in instead.
If you walk back there a lot, grass is going to take more traffic than anything else that you could put back there. I've always thought it would be nice to get a moss backyard, but you need to get consistent moisture too for moss to grow well and grow thickly. Otherwise, about the lowest things that you can walk on and they'll take it, darn them, are violets,
Mhm.
which are going to spread into your beds on the side. So you need to make sure that those aren't there. The violets are doing very well in our backyard. It's amazing that you can mow over these guys and they still bloom and do their own thing. And we have a mix of the native white violet and the Labrador violet with the purplish leaves, and they're just spreading themselves all over the place, I think, fine.
And we just mow our green area long too. We
Yeah,
don't,
Yeah,
we,
I do too.
it is quite tall, especially the shady area. Then it looks much fuller, even though when you walk on it, it's very,
yeah.
so,
What kind of trees are casting shade back there?
They're the neighbors' trees. There is a dying apple in my yard, but it doesn't really cast much shade. And honestly, I don't know. I think they're probably maples from the other. They're not oaks.
Are
From
there sugar maples?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that I am not sure. Nobody's tapping them.
Okay, yeah. Sugar
But I do,
maples.
yeah, I do throw in mini clover too, mini white clover.
Yep, has that taken?
Dies back. It takes for a while. I mean, what's really actually flourishes are the weeds, and they're ugly. And I spend hours, pulling them up by hand, and I'm really at the point where, you know, I try to aerate. I give a good raking with, I'm sorry, forgetting the word, where
With a dethatcher?
Yeah, with a dethatcher, and I think maybe I'm overdoing it. But the
Maybe,
fact
yeah,
I just
maybe.
don't like grass.
Yeah, I know
Might be.
we're the same way, and where we do have grass, it's kind of not the most comfortable grass to walk on.
Yeah.
It is the best thing to use for walking and for a surface to throw your weeds onto while you're working in the garden. And
Oh,
it is tough to grow. I'm assuming that you're loosening the soil. You're either tilling or doing something to the soil first.
I'm not tilling, I'm raking.
Just
And
right.
and I'm hand dethatching. I mean, I'm hand core aerating, and it's not really working very well. The core aerator gets clogged up in no time at all. And, I'm basically sort of playing pogo with it and not really getting the 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 I-
That
the
may be
cores out. I mean, decoring.
that may be the answer
I
that you
I would I would
get
get I would
a
rent
mechanical,
a legitimate core aerator and
and you
core aerate it.
and
Leave
the
the
pellet.
cores. Don't rake them up. Leave them and let them break down and let nature work it back and forth and then top dress. Then you could
I'm
put
thinking,
maybe.
I'm thinking to do that and then also just put a cover crop on it. You need something that's going to grow very thick, whether that's just clover or just an annual grass or oats.
Yeah.
I think you need to starve the weeds out, and I think probably the grass is just not able to compete because it's probably if it's the only area that you can walk in the yard, it's probably gotten packed down over the years. And if there's maples growing nearby, they've been drawing water down, which that settles things. It pulls soil particles down. So it could be just bad soil. So I would core aerate and then go heavy with the clover. And don't worry about the mini clover. The full-size clover is not big. I got to looking at that when somebody asked about it and went, why are we so insistent that it's got to be miniature? The main stuff is no more than 3 inches high when you keep it mowed anyway, and it still flowers and looks nice.
Yeah.
Switch to something and and give the plant, excuse me, give the area a while to breathe and to sort out the weeds that are there. To what did oh, the guy that fiddled while Rome burned, was it Nero who said let all the no Caligula, let all the poison that's in the mud eke out, let the seeds sprout and get killed by the being smothered by a heavy crop of oats or something first before you let the grass back in there. But hating grass, there's no real alternatives. We'll ask Pierre about that when we get into the webinar period. What would you do, Pierre?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
So maybe just skip the grass this time and, put in a lot of clover or oats or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I don't even care if it's ugly. I just want not to
Yeah,
have a weed
put in
garden.
a heavy seeding. I mean, a heavy seeding, so something comes up very thickly to help crowd out the weeds and to grow better than the weeds. And then either you can kill that or seed grass right next to it, right over the top of it.
Great.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Um, Diane is asking, do you think passiflower and ajuga can live together? Yesterday, I pulled out ajuga from around the base of the passiflower clumps, but was that necessary? I don't want to lose the passiflower if it can't defend itself.
I have not put a Juga and passiflower together, but I can tell you that the passiflower and the rug juniper are doing okay together. The passiflower is not as thick as it was, but it is still coming up where the juniper is coming through, and I'm waiting to see who wins. But I can't see. Let's see. Juga's gonna throw its new branch, its new runner over the top of the crown of the passiflower. It's gonna make it thinner, but I don't think it'll kill it. They have quite a different root system, and the passiflower is going to do better in the full sun than the ajuga will. So I might give it a try. We are older gardeners now. We can let things sort themselves out a little bit.
Quickly back to the stump killer. Priscilla, they have used Bondi, Bonide stump and
Oh,
vine
bonide,
killer.
bonide vine killer.
It is a small bottle that comes with a Dauber applicator.
All right.
It worked very well on a large buckthorn that had seeded in an old ewe at the cemetery.
That's great. Thank you, Priscilla. There's a small, there's somebody there's a producer or manufacturer who's thinking. They made a small bottle, they put an applicator right in with it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
It's so good when people share this information.
All
And
right.
right now, ornamental grasses are standing out. Spend your energy wisely. If you're going to cut them back, make it a low cut.
A low cut.
This is not a low cut. This ornamental grass, which has been cut down supposedly by the landscape company, is going to shade out its own middle buds coming up, and it's going to be more quickly turn into a one-sided or a grass with a hole in the middle of it, which you have to then divide to make look decent again. And dividing big grasses is not fun. And weeds get into them because they can do that. Cut it down, cut it way down. I mean, they get see that dip in the middle of it? That's a hole in the middle of the plant that's gotten old and it just shades itself out. So I see this and I go, okay, fine. That's a commercial planting. Let them worry about having to dig those up and divide them. But if it's in somebody's residential home, I want to knock on the door and go, do you know how much extra work you're making for yourself that you're going to have to divide them every 3 or 4 years instead of every 7 or 8 years? So this is grass at my sister's place in Wakefield in Massachusetts. And every year I would help her cut it down. She's getting ready to move now, so I guess that'll be my last year. But that's what it looks like when it's cut down.
It's cut down.
Wow. And if you see that circle that I made with some pieces of grass there, that's the crown of the plant. And these are old. They've been there for a while. This is an iris, Siberian iris, demonstrating what happens. But this is what they look like now. And if you look here, I mean, it's hard to tell. I've cut them all the way down. This part right here has little round Cheerios in it. Those are the hollow stalks of the things that were cut. There's a little area here that's not filled in. Oops. But that's because they're like, well, we planted them 15 years ago.
Yep.
Divided them one time, and that's all I want to divide them is one time. But so cut them down further. Otherwise, you've got to, this is a pennisetum, a fountain grass that I'm dividing because it's gotten dead in the center. That center part is not going to come up. Weeds are going to come up in it. It shades out its own center. Some of the grasses you don't cut all the way back. There are the evergreen grasses, and it's very apparent they're evergreen. They're still green in the springtime. This is blue fescue. There's also blue oat grass, and they're evergreen. Down south here where we are, there is muley grass that's evergreen. So if it's green, then you mow it. But even those, eventually, they start getting dead areas in them, and they do need to be divided. And you don't want to do it any sooner than you have to. But then you just chop them up. Are there any questions? I'd never heard of the Museum of Illusions, but I guess there's a kind of a chain. They're all over the place. This is our son and his family demonstrating one of the illusions. No questions?
3 of the 4 kids.
Yeah, one missing.
No, we don't. Oh, let's see. Barbara thought about what about planting carex instead of the grass, shade tolerant ones. Not sure how it feels on bare feet compared to grass.
Yeah, it's got carex grows in clumps. And so walking through it would be like Steve and I have a clump grass that's we've favored in our high mowing in the front yard. It's called Johnson grass. And it can be like you're walking on a bunch of little pillows, a bunch of little mounded things. So I don't think walking on carex would be real. There is a real short little carex, but I don't know how much it would take foot traffic.
And the Passflower is still Pulsatilla vulgaris, or what's its new name now?
Its new name is Pulsatilla vulgaris. It used to be.
Okay.
It used to be. Uh-oh.
No, it used to be Pulsatilla vulgaris. I'd swear by that myself.
No, that's what it turned into. It used to be Anemone pulsatilla. It used to be Anemone pulsatilla, then it got changed into its own genus.
Okay.
You know you're in Canada when you see a sign that says ball and hockey playing prohibited. Not just no balls, no skateboarding, but no hockey playing.
Yeah, our knowledgeable crowd answered that question about the Pulsatilla.
Did they?
Barbara was saying maybe she should get a soil test for the lawn area too.
Maybe, but when the weeds grow well, then the soil usually has enough umph in it for something to grow well. But yeah, good idea to do. I'm going to we decided to send out something about season 6, so I'm going to miss that. This is the time of year when you notice dead branches because things are leafing out. And when you see that low down shame, low down is where you should look. Look for the cause. Um, we had the problem of rabbits eating off the bark. They would rather eat clover. They would rather eat green stuff. But during the winter, the only place they can find green stuff is if they peel the bark off and eat the cambium underneath. I mean, they're looking for that nutrient that's there. So if you see this, then you just bite the bullet and cut the branch off. Voles can do this too. This is a track where a vole chewed its way through the crowns of the grass. And if they can get close enough to woody plants, they will chew just below the surface all around the base of a new tree. And sometimes the branch dieback is because in the wintertime there was a heavy weight on the branch of ice and it split. So look down and cut all the way back, cut back past the damage. Sometimes the damage is because the bark warmed up and the cambium started photosynthesizing and then exploded in the wintertime, burst because it froze. And you see cracked and lifting bark, go back, take it further back. Sometimes it's borers. This is in a rhododendron.
Yep.
Branch was wilted and died back. And when I cut it, I went, oh man, there's borers. Keep cutting. You want to cut out all of the part that the borers have gotten into, which might mean that you're cutting well below the damaged part that you see, but cut down to where you're below the damage. This is borer on a viburnum. Usually you don't get borers in woody plants unless the plant is weak anyway. And this viburnum was weak because it was in the shade and the soil was too wet and it had crowded stems. It's kind of like 3 strikes against it and the borer had moved in. So we cut it back so that it could grow back again and also diverted the water from the area. Shouldn't be so wet. Any questions coming in? I had to look at this picture when Steve gave it to me. I went, what the heck is that? This lovely look of prickly pear cactus coming out of its winter wrinkles. I do not like working around prickly pear cactus. No questions? We can keep on going. I have a lot of things that are not pretty to look at, but are rampant. Colorado spruces are pretty, but they don't fare well in the Midwest. This is a Colorado spruce that our client asked us about, should I take it down? I said, I'd give it maybe 10 more years and it's going to be one of those, what did Judy call them? Michigan palms.
Michigan palms, yeah.
The only leaves that it's got are way up at the top. But what's going on with these trees that really belong in a very small area of, shame on you, Colorado, of Idaho and Wyoming. I mean, they're native in a couple of counties there, but they're called Colorado blue spruces. In there, they grow all the way down to the ground. They have beautiful skirts that flare out. They have no grass to compete with. And they don't like bluegrass. They don't like our hot summers in here. And that makes them more susceptible to a canker, a fungus infection that kills the wood. And it starts usually in the lower branches that get damaged by mowing and people walking by and moves up. So it's worse low, and the fungus from those branches, the spores float up and splash up on the branches above. When you see the interior of a blue spruce looking like this with all this white sap dripping on it, that's coming from branches above that are infected, and that canker is killing the cambium underneath the bark and exuding this stuff that drips down and then splashes up on other branches. So if you've got a Colorado spruce, you need to keep the dead cut out, all of the dead and all of the cankered wood that you see, that looks like that. Keep it cut out. And then when you finally get tired of it, plant something other than the Colorado spruce. Plant the white spruce. Most people don't know the difference between Colorado spruce and white spruce. They look very similar. The cones are smaller and they're much more tolerant. Plant a white fir, plant a Norway spruce, but don't add that. And we put these things into articles. So this one, for instance, if you went to our What's Up, which is where our weekly articles are, and then from What's Up on your phone or your iPad, you'd have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page to see this second menu. but go to Ensemble Editions, and it would tell you that you're in early spring, and all the issues are there in numerical order. This one happens to be in 138. The spruces are doing what they're doing, and also about how talking to plants works. So this is a PDF type article where you download the whole little magazine. I think it's about 18 pages, and you just click read, and then you can read it on the screen, or you can download it and keep it. We're still moving
Oh.
along here.
Diane knew that the scientific name was the other common name was windflower for an enemy.
Oh, yeah,
Also,
windflower or pass
I
flower,
think pass flower. Yep.
or prairie crocus.
Prairie.
another one.
Yep.
Our daughter's dog chasing geese. No questions. Okay.
Nope. No hands up. No question.
Oh no, I'm here again.
How did you do that?
I don't know how this happens. I don't know. Got to get back to a blue dot. There we go. Blue dot, take me back to the. Uh-oh, okay, let's see. I'm going to go quickly to stubborn geraniums, and I'll come back to fungicide because it's one of the serious problems that I got into. People keep geraniums over the winter. They keep a beautiful geranium. These are the pelargoniums, the annuals that we call geranium, and they're really pelargoniums. Coddle them all winter, and then they don't get any bloom, and they wonder why. Although they are from Africa, the geraniums that we use as the pelargoniums that we use as annuals, they still need a cold period in the wintertime. So if you're going to keep them in the house for at least like 4 weeks, put them in a room that's cooler, like 55 degrees, 60 degrees. They need a period of cold, or they're not going to initiate flowering. They'll still have beautiful leaves for you when they start growing again, but you need to have the flowers. They'll just be all leafy, especially the fragrant leafed ones, the apple scented geranium, and the mint scented, and the chocolate scented, and the rose scented, and the lemon scented. They're wonderful plants, but they need that cold period to get going. That didn't prompt anything. I got to go back to uglies.
Nope. Got to go back to ugly.
Okay. Well, this harks back to last week, talking with Sonia. If you have to help a plant fight a fungus, get serious about the fungicide that you choose. It's wise to learn how to rate pesticides. So I'm going to give you a quick lesson here on using pesticides, especially fungicides. So snow mold, we told you, was a problem this year because of that ice cover, which trapped the air on the grass, and you'll find that snow mold usually clears up during the growing season. But if you want to help a weak grass with that, or in the case of our daughter Sonia, she's got a peach tree, and they'd really dearly love to have peaches, but every year since they put it in, it has done this. This is called peach leaf curl. Don't you love it that they name diseases how they look? And what it's doing is it's killing back branch tips, which is killing the flowers and infecting the fruit as well. It is a fungus infection. It spreads each year from fungus spores that are left on the branches and in the buds. And the way to protect for it is to cover the plant with a fungicide before it leaves out so that the fungus spores get killed. So Sonia went looking for a fungicide. I said, look for something with copper in it. And she said, the only thing that's got copper in it, Mom, is named Dr. Doom. And it says, keep it away from dogs and kids and whatever. Okay, pay no attention to the product name, Dr. Doom, Brush Be Gone. Those are both pesticides. This one is a fungicide. Look at the active ingredient and look into the active ingredient. Copper has been used since ancient times because why do we have copper pipes that take our water? Your water sits in those copper pipes, and if it just sits there, mold would grow in it, but not in copper. Copper keeps mold from growing. So this is made on copper octanoate, which is a copper soap. And if you look up what's called LD50, you can search. It used to be harder to do. Go to a search engine and put in the ingredient name and then LD50. LD50 stands for lethal dose 50%. That means that when they tested that item, the amount that proved to kill 50% of the test population, and it's expressed in milligrams. How many milligrams of this stuff do you have to eat? And it's usually oral, eat per kilogram of the animal weight. Well, the LD50 for copper octanoate is greater than 5,000 milligrams per kilogram. How many is 5,000 milligrams? That's 5 grams. That's a lot of copper. 5 grams of copper before it would kill something that was, and that's per kilogram of your weight. So you've got to figure out your kilos of weight. You'd have to eat a lot of copper. So what it is, it stands for lethal dose 50, and it's called the acute oral toxicity. That means the damage that you get right away from orally ingesting this stuff is based on the LD50, and in this case, it gets a caution. It's called where does it say? I thought I put it on here. Brr, causes death. Okay, I'll have to find it on a different page. I thought it was on this page. But copper octanoate gets a rating of category 3, which is caution. Below category 3 is unlikely to cause any damage. Above category 3 is danger, is careful, and above that is
Death.
danger, is death. Yeah, no, they're all death. And as a comparison, you have to remember that LD50, the lower the number, the more toxic it is. So an LD50 of 100 means 100 milligrams of the substance would kill a 1 kilo animal. A 5,000 LD50 means you have to have 50 times as much of it to get it. Carbaryl, for instance, is 7. People use 7 as an insecticide all the time, and its LD50 is 250 milligrams. It's still, what is that? 250 going into 4, 5, 20 times more toxic. And carbaryl is something that's used a lot. So you can look up, once you've got the LD50, then you know whether it's a high number or a low number, and compare it to 7 that so many people are using. If it's higher than 250, then it's not as dangerous as 7. Some of the most dangerous things are not things you would even think about. Pyrethrins, we'll get to that a little bit later. I think I put them in here. Pyrethrins, which is a naturally occurring insecticide, has an LD50 of 50. And so was it DDT? Some of the ones that we
There was
took off.
something else. Yeah, there were
Yeah.
some
Another
real
way,
toxic ones.
yep. Another way you can find out about something is search the ingredient name and safety data sheet. And please help me that the EPA is not going to shut down its websites and take these things away, because they tell you for octanoic acid, which is the copper octanoate here, it's going to tell you its formulation, how they make it. It's basically a soap. It tells you copper salt of fatty acid. And it's going to tell you that it is there's where you get the category 3. It's a caution rating. And as some dermal sensitization studies were negative. In other words, it wasn't messing up the skin. And then it tells you that there's a lot of information about copper and how much is naturally in the human body. And part of the hazard assessment program, they reviewed all the available toxicological information and what they concluded. And they concluded that that there is a reasonable certainty that no harm will result to consumers, including infants and children, from exposure to copper. They do say, as they get into the rest of the things, because it tells you about the chemical itself and the ecological effects, whether it affects the water. And it says we're already using copper on all the water, shouldn't be a problem. But it'll tell that, for instance, where's the dermal? This is skin, 2,000 milligrams per kilogram is the LD50. Inhalation, they said someplace above that it's unlikely you're going to inhale it. Eye irritation on rabbits, some irritation, so don't get it in your eyes, which is why we tell people to wear glasses or goggles, and non-irritating to the skin. These are important things to have, and in every safety data sheet, there's an actual person and part of the EPA that you can contact. Now, a lot of these things, a lot of these fungicides and insecticides, all the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides and miticides are all pesticides. A lot of these things have been taken off the market for homeowners. That's why Sonia could only find 1 copper. And they were taken off because back in the 70s, when the EPA was formed and the Clean Water and Clean Air Acts were passed, a lot of products that we were using had to be tested and prove themselves safe. And once they proved themselves safe or caution or whatever it was that they got labeled as, they had a certain number of years at that rating. Then they had to be retested. So they all came up to be retested at the same time in about the 90s. And some of the companies went, I'm not going to spend the money to retest this. I'm selling enough of this stuff to the professional appliers and the farms. I don't need to worry about selling it to the retail people at home. So a lot of these things got pulled off the market, not because they were necessarily terrible, but because they weren't being retested, so they couldn't be relabeled. If they keep gutting the EPA, we're going to lose a lot of information on stuff. But so this doctor, what we got for Sonia instead was that it's an oil. I've forgotten which oil, because oil will also help against fungus, not as well as copper, but oil will coat the fungus spore and keep it from sporulating. And oil is also an insecticide. So she's using an oil instead. Not because it was a precaution, but because it took me too long to look up all the stuff for her to find out which one she should buy. She also said, I got this big bottle of this oil stuff now. I said, well, if you want, you can try it on your mugo pines. This might be a pine needle fungus disease called pine needle rust. It might. But if you look at where it's happening on the mugo pines, see it's the interior part. If you look up where mugo pines are native, they're native on the tops of mountains where air is constantly moving through them from all sides. And these are backed up against the porch and crowded and pinched, crowded by their own selves, which are more dense than they should be. And see, the front part looks pretty much fine. So it could be more a matter of pruning that'll help that than anything else. Okay, questions? Anybody?
Just a,
Nobody? Yeah.
just a comment from Barb. She has one geranium that has bloomed all winter and is still in bloom now.
All right, right. You got to keep it in enough, you're keeping it in enough light that it's still blooming. And so it never lost its stimulus from the last time it was cool. Away. Okay, I think that takes us into, look at those pine needles. This is a Japanese red pine, and it had a rough winter. Don't like the cold in the open. And when it's rough, things like pine needle scale, these are insects,
Wow.
are going to be worse.
Yep.
Now, another thing that came up, and let's see if there's enough time here. Yeah, there's enough time. This is important because everybody loves roses. They speak right to the heart. And rose rosette virus, which is called RRD or rose rosette disease, it's a heartbreaker, a real heartbreaker. And we're going to tell you a 10-year progress of learning about this to understand why I'm going to tell you just don't grow roses for a while. In 2010, I noticed that one of my clients who has a lot of different roses, some of the branches didn't look right. The leaves were smaller, were weaker. And I thought, what the heck is going on with the roses? See the different foliage? These are pictures from 2010. This is when I first ran into this. And when I cut them back, I said, I'm going to cut them back. The new growth, I described it as ferny. And I've seen that in a couple of the bulletins too. I said, that's really weird. Why is it doing that? And in researching it and looking at when it grows back, do I get a whole bunch of little tiny twigs instead of the big branches that were coming out before? What I found, and it took me the whole winter, so I dug them out the next year, was I found some bulletins from Western states, rose rosette disease. It was not yet reported in Michigan, and I'd never heard of it before. It came into the country probably in the mid 1900s and was at first acclaimed as, well, how about that? A disease that affects that stupid rose multiflora that grows and makes thickets in fields and climbs up trees and is a very invasive exotic plant. It affects those, but not our roses. Ha ha ha. No, they were wrong. It affects our roses too. And the only way to deal with it, it is a virus. Once it's in the plant, once the plant is exhibiting the virus symptoms, you need to remove the plant and the roots because it's in the roots and the plant itself. It is spread by mites. And the reason I'm talking about this today is because we talked about taking our lilac out that had eriophid mite problems. And Barb said, well, eriophid mites are what spread rose rosette disease. It's a different eriophid mite. There are a lot of different kinds of eriophid mite, but I wanted to know, do I need to burn this lilac that I'm taking out because I don't want to infect the whole neighborhood while our bundles of branches are sticking out in the middle of waiting to be picked up. So there are now a lot of places that, because Rose Rosette has moved around, a lot of bulletins that you can read if you put in Rose Rosette. So Missouri Botanical Gardens, for instance, has one that tells you what the symptoms look like and shows you great pictures, better pictures than I could ever take. Because I don't usually call Steve from a client, didn't call Steve from a client's house and say, come take a picture of this ugly plant. I would snap the picture myself. Within 2 years of, so the first year I saw it, the second year had figured out what it was. By the end of that second year, I was seeing it all over the place. Even at 35 miles an hour, as I drove by where we'd pruned for Kay at this place years ago. These are Rugosa roses, and they looked terrible. And this was in June. The foliage was chlorotic and small. There was, see the excessive thorniness? Look at those thorns. That looks like cactus, not like roses. And dieback on the plant, on all the plants. And the rugosas, as it turned out, are hit harder than the hybrid teas. But then I saw it the next year, I started seeing it in the ground cover roses. This is one of the ground cover roses called Little Wonder. That's
Little
one.
wonder, I'm pretty sure it was that
Yeah.
something like that.
And I looked at it and I said, oh, look, the thorns are different than they were before. And the new growth is, a lot of roses come out in the springtime with a purpley red foliage. This comes out bright red and it doesn't turn to green like it should. It stays kind of red. I watched it, and this is earlier. And at this point, they say you can try pruning out all of the damaged wood and watching it to see whether you've got it controlled. So I pruned out all the damaged wood. I kept one piece. I probably shouldn't have kept that one piece, and put oil on it to try to kill the mites that are living on the buds over the winter time. But after 2 years of doing that, I've got this rose that's not as big as it should be and is still exhibiting symptoms. See the red? And we thought, I said, Mildred, is this worth it? This is a lot of work to do this stuff and to put oil on plants and try to keep them extra healthy. So we took them out. 5 years into it, then I saw it in Massachusetts. I hadn't seen it in Massachusetts before, but I looked and I went, this is the varieties. Normal thorns look like this. And now it's got all these little prickly things coming up in big clusters. I said, oh, shoot. I said, I think you've got rose rosette disease. And even the best grown canes, even the thickest canes on them, were symptomatic of rose rosette disease. So we told the client of strategies that we could try, but the whole area had wild multiflora roses on the adjacent properties. I said, no matter what you do, unless you get those roses cleared out of those neighbors' properties, they're going to be the typhoid Marys. They're going to carry this disease, and the mites are going to get blown from there to the other. But this client said, I have to have my roses. I said, okay, you can wait and see how bad they are. By fall, it was very apparent this was the best of them, how stunted and awful skinny looking they were. And even the best of them had, see the bright red weird thorns? So now, every single year, we take the roses out and put new roses in. I haven't been there for 2 years, but that's what they do. I said, just start treating them as annuals. Get new roses every year that are healthy, and try to get the roses out that had it. Get them out before bud break. Take them out in the fall and put your new ones in. Someone had their hand raised, Steve? Got a question? Let's on.
No, there's a question though. Does copper work as a preventative for black spot or only as a treatment?
It all of the fungicides are all preventive.
They're not treatments.
They cannot cure black spot that's there. You prune out black spot that's there. You use copper or oil to smother the fungus spores or kill the fungus spores before they get started. So all of the fungicides are preventives. They have to go on before the inoculation time, the infectious period.
That's
Yeah, year 5, it was ground cover roses. This is Carefree Wonder. And it had been 2 years in place, and I looked at it come up. I said, Sue, you're going to have to take those roses out. She said, I love them. They're so beautiful. I said, they might look pretty to you, but they are weak as all get out. See, it doesn't mature green. Later on, it's still got that red cast to it. See the red cast? And they bloom poorly. They're only half the size they should be, and they're going to ultimately die Meanwhile, they're infecting other roses because the mites from there are blowing or being carried on your hands and whatever brush past the plant to other roses. Year 7, we stopped in the evening. This was when Deb and I were on the way back, Steve. We stopped in the evening at Niagara Falls Botanical Garden, and I walked into their rose collection and went, oh my gosh, hundreds of roses of all kinds. And I couldn't find any bed that didn't have symptoms.
Wow.
This is a bad disease, and the answer to it is breeding new roses. 8 years, this is a friend's rose. She said, but it was my dad's rose. Can't I try it? I said, you can try, Sandy, but the next year it's just going to be weaker and weaker and weaker. So all over the region, we're saying, watch for the disease, cut out what you see, dig out what continues to show it. There are breeding programs aiming for rose rosette disease resistance. You can go to roserosette.org where they post the most current journals. And I'll tell you, when you want to talk dry reading, it's dry reading. But they're trying to take roses, native North American species roses, and breed their genes into the hybrid roses to see if they get resistance. But that takes years. It took decades and centuries to get some of the roses like Louis Cannes. Peace rose is what, from the 1940s, the peace rose, and that took a long time to develop. So you might want to just start growing things that fill the rose season, like phlox and hibiscus and veronicas, but don't fight this stuff. It's not fightable.
Do you think you could take a healthy looking cutting of the rose and start over?
Well, that's what buying new roses each year does, is you're starting from plants that someone has kept and what they call it virus indexed to make sure that they're healthy. But this is a great timing. This is a brand new Mr. Lincoln rose. Remember, Steve, I told Eric that Mr. Lincoln was the best rose and it was one that his dad liked so much. This is brand new, just planted, and look at it. So even at the growers, they can get infected. And many of these growers are holding the roses over the winter, right, to sell a big rose the next spring. So by summer, it still looks bad. It's still not, it did not live up to being Mr. Lincoln. And the mites that carry this is, you're looking at a magnified picture here. I think you have to have at least 30x magnification to see them. They're tiny little critters. They can blow in the air. It's assumed they blow around because they're seen holding their bodies up vertically like the spiders do. That, remember Charlotte's Web where the baby spiders floated off? It's assumed that they float from place to place. So it's a major problem. Eventually results in the death of the plant. And this is one of the best. One of the best is Georgia's Extension Bulletin, and also Utah's are one of the best for great information, including the name of the mite, to kind of finally tell me, good, they're vectored by a mite called Phylocoptes. The one that gets into the lilac is a different one. It took me some time to find that one. Miticides are not recommended, Georgia says, because we don't know that they actually work, that the infection happens before you can kill the mites. All this came up when we showed this lilac. It's a late lilac, Syringa villosa. And the areaphid mite here, we thought, oh no, we're putting the wood out. But fortunately, thank you, UMass. Thank you, Massachusetts Extension, because I went looking. It took me a long time to find which one. The lilac, it's Aculops mesolongii. It's not even in the same family as the rose rosette disease vector. So, okay, we can leave the lilac wood sitting around for a while until we drag it out to the street, Steve. That's the kind of stuff you want to look at.
How long does it usually take the healthy new reddish springtime rose leaf growth to change to green? I'll be keeping eye on mine this year.
It should when it comes out red, it's because it's cold. It gets a couple of warm days, it's green. When they hold it on for a week later, 2 weeks later, in these cases we're looking at all summer long, it's another matter. But there's lots of areophile mites that we've told you about, the one that gets into Caryopteris and causes the stems to be deformed. That's yet another type of areophile. There's thousands of types of areophile mites, or at least 1,900, I think. But see the weird growths on that? So I told you, if you got weird growths on a plant, suspect area-fied mites, but it might not be the same ones we're talking about with rose rosette disease. It's probably not. Most of them are very specific to a particular species of plant or a genus of plant. And this is early on looking into the base of the Caryopteris and saying, look at this.
Wow.
It might be a good reason why someone asked me, do I cut down? I always cut Caryopteris all the way down to the ground. I'd like it to bloom a little later and a little thicker. And it's good to get rid of the Caryopteris wood.
Mhm. So is there any type of rose that doesn't seem to get the disease?
There are a couple of species, native species roses. They're not particularly wonderful roses. And if you looked at the Utah Extension Bulletin or go to that roserosette.org site, they'll tell you some of the species that they're working with, but they are not species that have been developed to be big, showy roses yet. They're just native species. I think one of them is a Carolina rose. And here I am in Carolina.
All right.
Sometimes on things like this, sometimes we learn what we need to know, even though it's not what we want to know. So thank you. The more things you bring up, the more reason there is to look at stuff. Steve, remember the movie Quantum, what was the Marvel movie with the Ant-Man? See what they used as one of the monsters?
Yes,
Quantum
yeah,
realm.
it was one of them. Yep.
Yeah.
It's after 8.
Yeah, Ben. Oh, okay. So we're gonna have to go. I'll save things for later. I'm sorry. Utah's bulletin has all the different. There are lots of different kinds of mites, and most of them you'll read in about area-fed mites. Most of the mites do not cause any serious problem. They cause little galls on the leaves or spots. It's only when the plant is weak from something else, or it's really a bad vector, a carrier of disease like rose rosette disease, that you worry about area-fed mites. Okay, let's get
Wow.
out of this
All
stuff.
right.
Chemical groups. This is why you want to learn about chemicals. Phew. Aren't you glad you came in to talk about this today? But don't keep those roses that look like that. Don't keep them. Give up. It's not worth it.
You're not gonna be able to fix it.
If there are questions that you sent to us over the week, and I can't even remember now which other ones there were, they're on our computer screen. We'll get to them next week. If there's new questions that come up, please remember to send them to us, email them to us,
Yeah.
text them to us. Our phone number, you can find it on the website. If you can't find it on the website, you can always email us and say, next time I want to text you. And that works pretty well. So that's it for this Free for All Friday. We're really glad you came and joined us. We're really glad to be able to keep doing this. And if you got our emails, you found that we're beginning to ask for some help with keeping the website going, because this is important to us and it takes us time to do, and we want to keep doing this.
Yep.
Help us out if you can. We'll be doing a Free-for-All Friday next Friday, April 4th. And then the Friday after that, April 11th, we will not be, because on April 12th, we have our first webinar of the season. We hope you'll join us for that webinar. You can join for one webinar, and if you like it, we'll apply that $25 toward your fee for the whole year, or you could just go ahead and sign up for all of season 6. And all you got to do is send us an email, and we'll sign you up. No problem.
All right. Thank you all very much.